Welcome to episode 19 in our series on Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto's The Path of the Just. And we're coming up to the end of chapter 11, this very long chapter that deals with various examples of how we can purify our everyday actions. And Ramchal has described many different types of everyday occurrences. But in the last section of chapter 11, we have this kind of mini chapter within the chapter describing the most important common undesirable traits of character, which are pride, anger, envy and lust. And we've dealt with the first three already, and to conclude this chapter we're going to deal with the last one, which is lust for like honor, things like that. So the Ramchal begins. We find that the companion trait of envy is desire and lust, which wear down a man's heart until the day he dies. As the sages of blessed memory stated, and he quotes from Koheles Rabbah, chapter 1, verse 13, no one fulfills even half of his desires before he dies. The essence of lust, however, branches off into two categories. Number one, the desire for money, and the other, the desire for honor. Both are equally harmful and are the cause of many ills. The desire for money binds a person to this world and places the shackles of labor and the pursuit of business upon him. As it says in Mishlei 5 verse 9, one who loves silver will never be satisfied by silver. So we all know that if you become obsessed by material wealth, it can become an itch that can never be scratched properly, and you end up becoming a slave to this kind of lifestyle of trying to obtain money. Of course, it's not bad to want to earn a living for your family or your future generations, but there is a point where it becomes you're kind of you're working to live, not living to work. And the Ramchal continues. This distracts him from the service of the eternal. Many prayers go to waste, and many mitzvot are forgotten due to excessive involvement in business and the toil invested in large-scale enterprise. This becomes even more relevant regarding the learning of Torah. The sages of blessed memory have already stated in Eruvin 55a, it is not across the sea. Means that Torah does not reside in those who travel across the sea for business. And we have learnt in Pirkei Avos, chapter 2, Mishnah 6, he who excessively invests in business will not become wise. It, the desire for money, exposes him to many dangers and piles up worries that sap his strength. And this can happen even to the very successful person. And accordingly, we learned also in Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 2, Mishnah 7, increasing one's possession only increases one's worries. It is this situation which often leads one to violate the mitzvot of the Torah and the norms of common sense as well. Worse than this is the desire for honor. A person will be able to overcome his desire for money and other enjoyments were it not for the pressure exerted upon him by the desire for honor, for he cannot endure seeing himself inferior to his peers. Over this matter many have faltered and perished, and I'm sure we're all familiar with this desire for honor that's never more prevalent than it is today, perhaps, with social media that kind of pushes us to try and be one better than the other, everybody competing to have a more lavish occasion than each other to show off, or chasing status as in general. Now the Ramchal is going to bring the example of how at the highest level honor can be a destructive trait, and he brings the example of Yaravam ben Nevat. So Ramchal continues. For example, Yaravam ben Nevat, he was barred from the world to come only because of his desire for honor. This is what the sages of blessed memory said in Sanhedrin 102a. The Holy One, blessed be He, grabbed him referring to Yerovam, by his garment, and said to him, "Repent, and I and you and Ben Yishai will walk in Gan Eden." Yerovam said to him, "Who will be in the lead?" God said, "Ben Yishai will be in the lead." Yerovam then said, "If that's the case, I'm not interested." And also, the Ramchal brings the example of Korach, how he perished because of his desire for honor. So he continues, what caused Korach to perish? And along with him his whole entourage. It was only the desire for honor. It is stated explicitly in Bamidbar 16 verse 10, and now you wish to have the priesthood as well? The sages of blessed memory related that all of this was the result of Korach seeing Elitzaphan ben Uziel chosen as Nasi, or the leader of their tribe, for Korach desired to be Nasi in his place. And also the Ramchal brings an example of the spies who were sent to scout the land of Israel, and he continues, it was a desire for honor that, according to our sages of blessed memory, led the spies to slander the land of Israel, thus bringing death upon themselves and that whole generation. This was brought about by their fear that their honor might be diminished upon entering Eretz Israel, because others might replace them as Israel's Nesiim, or leaders of the tribe. And also what prompted Shaul's efforts to waylay King David. It was because of honor, as it says in Shmuel 18 verses 7 to 9. And the women who were celebrating responded, saying, Shaul smote thousands, and David tens of thousands. And Shaul never looked at King David from that day onward in the same way. And also the case of Yoav when he murders Amasa. So who is Yoav? Yoav was the son of Zeruviah, who was the nephew of King David and the commander of King David's army, according to the Torah. And it was this incident with Yoav where he murdered Amasa. What happened was, Yoav's he justified killing Amasa because apparently he thought that Amasa was conspiring with Sheva, the son of Bichri, who was from the tribe of Benjamin, due to Amasa's slowness to mobilize the army against Sheva's rebels. So that's this case that Ramchal is about to describe. And he continues, what caused Yoav to kill Amasa? Honor, of course. For David said to him, Amasa, if you will not be the general of my army, all my days in place of Yoav. Mm-hmm. So, the summary. The desire for honor is what grips a person's heart more than all the worldly wants and desires. If not for this, a person would be content to eat whatever whatever is at hand, to wear whatever would cover his nakedness, and to dwell in a house that would protect him from the elements. Thus making a living would be an easy matter, and a person wouldn't need to exert himself at all in order to prosper. However, because he can't endure seeing himself humiliated and lowered before his peers, he enters this fray with no end in sight to all his labour. With this in mind, our rabbis of blessed memory have said in Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 4, Mishnah 21, envy, lust, and the pursuit of honor remove man from the world. They also cautioned us, also in Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 6, Mishnah 5, do not seek greatness and do not yearn for honor. How many are willing to starve, are willing to humiliate themselves by living off charity, but shun work they think is beneath them, and all because of the fear that their honor might be diminished? Is there anything more inane than this? And they even prefer a state of idleness that leads to stagnation, lewdness, theft, and the violation of all the cardinal sins, rather than lowering their stature and denigrating their seeming honor. So it seems that our ego is our enemy in this respect. If we should be a bit more humble and accept that if we are to work for somebody, that we could do any job. And not feel as if it's beneath us and as if we are embarrassed in front of other people. Most of the time it's in our head, and once we get this sorted out, it's much better for us. So what are the instructions of our sages? The Ramchal continues, our sages of blessed memory, however, who have instructed and guided us continuously in the ways of truth, have said in Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 1, Mishnah 10, love work and hate rabbinic positions. They also said in Pesachim 113a, flay a carcass in the marketplace and do not say, I am an important person, I am a kohen. And they also said in Baba Basra 110a, one should always take on work that is unfamiliar to him instead of being dependent on the help of others. In conclusion, I note that the desire for honor is one of the greatest obstacles that faces man, and he cannot be a faithful servant to his master as long as he worries about his own honor. For inevitably, such a person would end up diminishing the honor of heaven for the sake of his own foolishness. This is what David HaMelech, may peace be upon him, said in reference to honoring the Holy Ark. And he quotes from Shemuel 6:22. And even if I become lesser than this and I become lowly in my eyes. The only true honor is true knowledge of the Torah. Similarly, our sages of blessed memory have said, and again, Ethics of Our Fathers is quoted here, chapter 6, Mishnah 3, the only honor is that of the Torah, as it also says in Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 35, the wise inherit honor. Anything else is merely imaginary and false honor, empty and serving no purpose. For the one who is clean, it is worth his while to cleanse and purify himself totally from the desire for honor. Then he will succeed. Up to this point, I have included many of the particulars of the virtue of cleanliness. This is a paradigm for all other mitzvot and virtues. The learned person will listen and increase his knowledge, and the man of understanding will acquire profundities. That's from Proverbs chapter 1, verse 5. I cannot, however, deny that attaining this level of cleanliness requires some effort. Nonetheless, I maintain that it does not require as much as one might at first imagine. Thinking about this conjures up more difficulties than you'll find in reality. For once a person decides on this goal and resolutely determines to possess this virtue, all he needs is to form the right habit and he will regain it, with much less effort than he could ever have imagined. This is something whose truth will be proven by experience. So that concludes the 11th chapter, and it's very true, this idea of remaining humble and not lusting after honor. We remind ourselves of Moshe Rabbeinu, who is described as exceedingly humble, and he was the greatest prophet of all time, and he was the greatest statesman and led a people. But he was exceedingly humble, me'od ma'od, and we should learn from that. We should regard God. We should try and become close to God, and when you are close to God, you realize you have God's backing, and then you truly have no needs for any airs or graces, or any arrogance, or any desire for honor. Again, to be a servant of God is the highest office a person can attain. So we must remember that. And in the next chapter, which is chapter 12, we start a new rung of the ladder, and this is acquiring cleanliness, how we must do this. So we finish now all the examples of everyday life and cleanliness within everyday life, and hopefully the next chapter, chapter 12, we will deal with the how to acquire cleanliness.